Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
Good morning, everyone. It is Non-Farm Friday, June 7th, 2024. My name is John Pieranunzi, and this is the opening swing. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Europe is a bit softer, about 0.5%. Out of Europe, we had German balance of trade, German industrial production, Nagel spoke, ECB's Nagel. We also had the Euro area GDP estimate. Not a whole bunch of earth-shaking news out of Europe, as I've said. Most markets seem to be waiting for the U.S. hours non-farm payrolls report, which is our big 8:30 news driver. We also have the Canadian NFP at 8:30, but the U.S. is our big driver today, obviously, which is at 8:30. We also have wholesale inventories at 10, and at 10:15, Lagarde is also speaking from the ECB, so that's not on this calendar, but to be aware of. Excuse me. We also have Cook at noon. There's the Baker Hughes rig count, which is a non-event for equities traders, but we're aware of it. So that's what we have today. The big news is going to be the NFP report. Let's take a very quick look. Well, we don't have to actually look at our weekly chart because there's essentially no change on the weekly chart. The key to be aware of on the weekly is we are holding above the prior week's high, which is in this 34-35 region. So on the weekly time frame, we're holding above the prior high. We're in price discovery higher. On the daily, we are currently in balance. We're within the prior day's range. However, there's a strong skew for higher prices. As long as we hold above on the daily chart here, this key area 24-49, this is the key area that I've been talking about for quite some time now. We pushed up into here. We had the 05 to the 49, that area. We tested above, released lower, found our buyers seemingly, and pushed up through. We were looking for this area to be tested. We knew this was where our sellers were. And what happened was on this round, the buyers defeated the sellers and we were able to get higher prices. Keys that I'm looking for on this chart today. Yesterday's range is very important. I'm expecting it, obviously, at least one of today's, or one of yesterday's extremes to be taken, either the high or the low, possibly for both to be taken in one way or another. But for me, something to be aware of here, if yesterday's high holds, then we will be putting in a market structure high. If yesterday's high does not hold and we push and fall back, that's balanced with a skew for higher prices. If we push and hold, we're in price discovery higher, and the next target up for me will be the 5400s based on the fact that it's the next most important option strike price and there's not much else to go on at the all-time highs. So keys on the daily chart for me, 24 to 49's this broad area, which includes our MCV pocket and the prior week's high. This is a key area. And the prior day's low at 45. So very key area of potential support right here. Let's move on to our structure chart and look a little deeper. Here we are. So just kind of reiterating what we've kind of said here. This getting a little bit more granular, 34 to 45s is the first key area within our prior balance that I would be looking for to be tested and potentially show support, because that is where the offer was, in my opinion. That's where the resistance was that turned to support. We saw that it turned to support when we made this low. This is yesterday's low. So pushing into here, the first line of defense, I would expect support above the 34s. If the 34s do not hold for this kind of upper half of this balance, then I would be open to a push lower into this 13 to 25 region, where I would also expect support again on the initial test. Let's go to our trigger chart and give a little bit more of a granular look to potential price action today. Okay, here is our 8 box. let's discuss what areas are important today. Yesterday's low, very key. Below yesterday's low, it's really a box of prices in my opinion, from about 42s down to the 34s. And then below that, like I said, the 25-ish down to the 13s. Then we have this low, which is a very important low. These 07s to 04s, this is a key area, in my opinion. And this is too volatile down. Below this, we have the Century and things I would expect any excursion below here if we get there to be pretty grindy. And then we have the prior week's VPOC at 88. This is 2.5 volatile down. This is about as far as I'm looking. Also, then further, we have the 60s, which were important yesterday, up to the prior settle, this region. Then our developing high, which we just missed. These are all lower highs, up to our 75s. And then above, all we really have, in my opinion, is the O's. So these are the areas I'm looking at. Let's look at the most bullish situation first, if we get a bullish situation. The most bullish situation, as always, would be if the developing overnight low holds or is tested and rejected quickly, in which case we don't get even an attempt at this low, which is yesterday's low. So that would be a hold somewhere around the overnight low that might not even get tested. But the key for if we get this kind of price action and we don't get a test, I would expect it to kind of be grindy and testy, like push up, take the high, maybe make a further attempt, fall back, but kind of start to hold this sort of this kind of like potential uptrend, excursion higher, continue for this key price or near it. Basically the 90s to the O's would be my key price. That would be what I would target today if I get on a long. And I'm less aggressive here just because at the all-time highs, things can be a little bit weird. You know, we really don't know what we're going off of. So for any type of excursion that shows the ability to get above the 75s, hold, and continue, I would be open to a test of the O's. And this would be kind of the primary bullish idea today. Well, the primary idea if we hold these prices. How else could this happen? Well, again, yesterday I was talking about this would be like the really good pullback, and we actually got it. The really good pullback today would probably be something that kind of like tries to get this overnight high, doesn't, takes this low. Maybe this is a pullback, no one's sure, but we can't get back above full session levels, and we get a push that takes yesterday's low, looks potentially bearish, tries to continue, cannot, gets back above the 50s with an impulse, works, gets to the 60s, and then continues. This would probably be a more tradable situation with some type of test below, because we'd have this low, we'd see it tested, revert above, and that would be able to tell us that longs are okay to target prior settle in the 60s region and potentially the prior high. So this would probably be the most tradable situation. I'll also flag that if the number is fairly volatile, this test could go the whole way down into this 25s area before giving a sharp reversal. So basically, let's get rid of this. So basically, I'm up for the long emanating from the overnight low to take the high. I'm up for a test of this area. The test below reverts above, holds, and gets to the prior settle. Or if the number comes out in some way, I would be open to a drop as far down to this 25 area that kind of zippers and then does the same thing, gets back above. In this case, the 34s would be the key. And for below 34s, then I'd look to target a retest of yesterday's low. And if we really continue, then settlement. So those would be scenarios where we get some type of a test to these prices. And how these prices get tested, how this action happens would potentially determine how we trade it, how I trade it, because we could also get sort of the same type of action, the same kind of tests, like weekly takes out the high. This would also be sort of a scenario to be aware of. Weekly takes the high, takes this low, but still holds yesterday's low, and then gives us some type of a really kind of grinding move higher. This would also be a possibility. But the bearish scenarios, if we get a bearish scenario, I think it'll happen. I think it'll be fairly surprising. I think it'd happen with some type of a test, or we might not get the test. It might stay lower, but regardless, it would be a drop into this area below the 60s that then, of course, cannot recover the 60s, goes down, takes yesterday's low. And like I said, this is an area where I would expect to see some attempt at buying. If there's some attempt at buying, then we'd probably see a recovery that attempts to get back to peace settle, attempts to hold on pullbacks, but just continues to fail lower. That would be what I'd be looking for as one possibility, or the other possibility could be a drop here that just does not even make an attempt. It just immediately continues lower to get the 33s, can't get back out of range, and then potentially gives the drop to the 25s. If you're trading short today, for me, the key target would be the 24, 25s. This would be the key target if I was short. 24s to 25s. Initial target would be 34s. Well, the initial target would be yesterday's low, then 34s, and then this would be my key target, 25s on the way down. If we continue through 25s, and if this happens, I would expect to get continuation lower, we'd have to see the selling and participation really pick up below yesterday's low. Like, it would be the difference between seeing price move to this area test, maybe one more try, and then above that, versus seeing like an impulsive move that really just gets below, is unable, and keeps taking these lows, keeps being unable to take these highs. I think that's the action we'd see if we'd see excursion below, because it would just be more and more sellers that wanted to unload up here, but they couldn't. So when all of a sudden this price goes off, it's like every test that might be a rally, just see the offers come back in, and the lows keep getting taken out. And maybe one of these kind of things where it keeps looking like it wants to hold, but it doesn't, and then finally maybe releases lower for these 25s. But this would be the key target. If we really continue through 25s, like I said, I'd be looking at 13s. But anywhere below 13s, I would be open to support ahead of this red band, a rounded bottom and support ahead of this band, some attempt higher. Let's take a look at this again. That's saying if we drop below and start to threaten this area, my primary expectation would be some kind of a rounded bottom above that makes an attempt to pull back. However, if this pullback happens and we still can't get back above or hold these 34s, and we see some type of a continuation lower that does get into these prices, I think that we could see if we get here, and I'm not necessarily expecting it, but I'm saying if we get to this area, which is 2 vol sig down, we might see some type of quick flush and then a reversion back up. I'm not really expecting price below here. It would be a surprise for me if it gets below here, but it could. If price gets below here and continues, I'll just be using the convergent stock zones as my target, with the prior week's VPOC at 88 as really the key target on any excursion. But like I said, this is 2 vol sig down, so I'm not expecting it. Today, like I said, I'm still expecting higher prices because that's been the trend. On any initial pushes below that hold 34s, below Y low that hold 34s, I would expect a rally. And if we don't, and we fall back and get the 25s would be the key short target. And my initial expectation, like I said, would be some kind of support if we test these prices, likely a rounded bottom. So that's what I'm looking for in the S&Ps. We also should be aware, of course, of our nothing scenario. And our nothing scenario would be a situation that potentially could take the high, fall back down, take the low, come back up, and just sort of reiterate this area of balance, which this could definitely happen today. If this happens today, like always, I would be looking at outside in scalp opportunities. Potentially, if we open lower here, get the opportunity to trade for the prior settle, or the prior settle would be definitely the outside in target if we get something like this, which is a distinct possibility. But that's what I'm seeing today in the S&Ps. I'm going to wrap it up here because it's getting to be long. We're only about a half an hour away from the number. Very, very quickly, though, I will once again just briefly talk about crude oil. So yesterday with crude oil, I was talking about this support that I saw emerge, this bid that came in, and I said if we hold 34s, we're good to look at. If we hold 74s, sorry, if we hold 74s, really when this happened, I was looking at 73s to trade 74s 2 nights ago. But coming into yesterday, I was saying if we hold 74s, we have a chance of getting the 75 handle and maybe some real upward excursion. And we got that in spades. Just a great trade in crude oil yesterday. And now today in crude oil, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. As long as we're able to hold the prior day's low, which I think is a pretty good shot since we're already above the prior day's high, we're going to start. We're going to see continued price exploration higher. Um, the thing is, this low and these singles at 76.21 were really the key target up here, and they've already been taken. So that kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. However, I'm still looking at this 77.25 naked VPOC region down to the prior week's low as a potential area to be tested. So we're looking at 76.67s, which is the prior week's low, up to the 77.25 as a potential test area today, if we are able to continue to hold above the prior day's high. Let's take a very quick look at a crude trigger chart here. So here's our trigger chart in crude. And just to reiterate, why did I like the long here? Just very quickly, I saw this as a bid and as support right here, this type of action. We reacted off the bid, fell back, reacted off the bid, and then just ground into the bid. And then what happened? That bid got filled and we flushed lower, but we couldn't retest this low. Why? Because there weren't sellers down here. There was no one else willing to sell. All the sellers got used up right here. And then we drop into this area and there's just no sellers left. No sellers. And then we pop above, and what do we see here? Market structure high and a market structure low. When I see that, a market structure high and a market structure low in balance, I'm looking for whatever was happening before to continue. What was happening before? We were finding buyers and pushing higher. I'm expecting the same thing to happen out of here. That's my primary expectation. And we got that push higher into the 75s, and we got the continuation higher. Like I said, this area 76 is where my key target. We got it. And now if we're able to continue, like I said, here's the prior day's high and our overnight low. As long as we are able to hold above the prior day's high or reject tests lower, I'm open to the continuation higher that I mentioned for the test. 76.40 initial target, then the prior week's low would be the test, and the area above I mentioned up to 77.25. So basically, if crude oil remains as bullish as it's been and it gives me opportunities to trade the long, I'll look for it. As I've mentioned yesterday, the ES is my primary product, but when the ES gets near the all-time highs or gets a little bit confusing or boring, a lot of times I look to crude because the auction is pretty clear. You can't trade as much size, but it's a pretty clear auction. It's a pretty good trade. And I think that this situation really showed that. But I'm going to, like this situation, this bid and then this stop run below and then the resumption higher was a good trade. And I think there's potential for it to continue if we continue to hold the full session low and especially yesterday's high or reject tests below. But that's all I got for you today. I'm going to cut it off here because, again, we're long and it's getting close to NFP time. So I hope everyone is having a great morning. I hope that everyone can do well today and find some way to improve their trading. And of course, most importantly, I hope that you can make some other people smile today, because that's really how you can, and just improve the world a little bit each day. And if you do that, then your trading is going to work out just fine. So I hope everyone has a great day and a great weekend. And I wish you the best of luck. And I'll see y'all here on Monday. Bye-bye, everyone.